Okay, great. I think we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. So my name is Oliver, and I'd like to welcome you to this last session in this room. So my job now is basically to announce a whole bunch of people. First things first, UI5 isn't the only UI development option that SAP offers. So today we will hear about the unique selling points of each of these UI frameworks, UI technologies, and hopefully engage in a lively discussion. And there's so much to say about this topic that books have been written about this. Well, I mean, there's at least one book. It's called SAP UI Frameworks for Enterprise Developers, and it's brand new, but you can already buy it. I think there's even a discount code available at the moment. So,
so too.
We should ask the authors about that. So luckily, we have them here today. Of course, if you've been anywhere in the UI5 community in the past, you will know most of the faces that you see on the stage, not really a stage, but that you see in front here. So I won't introduce them properly because they are going to do this themselves. So, but maybe let's start with the two authors of this book. So we have Volker Butzek here, we have Marius Obert, and then representing other UI technologies, we have Wouter Lemaire, also very well-known face, Marian Zeiss, and Simon Cohen. And I think that's it from me. And over to you, Volker, now.
Yeah, so I'll take over. Thanks. This is how it's going to go down. Each of the representatives, so Simon is for UI5, Marius is for fundamentals, Marian is for Fiori Elements, and Wouter represents web components, has a couple of minutes to pitch his topic really hard. And also intentionally diss the others. And you are not allowed to ask questions at that time. So that person has the unique talk time to himself. And after that, we're going to engage in a lively discussion on when to do what. I have a couple of questions noted down, but you can start asking immediately, essentially. So there's going to be a dialogue in the room here. And the background story, how we came up with the idea, so it's we, as in Marius and me. While we wrote the book, we touched each one of those subjects. And we ourselves essentially asked us, okay, when would we choose what technology? And we were even thinking about pulling in the adjacent tech stack into this discussion, such as SAP Build, such as mobile services, but this got declined. So you're stuck with the web-based SAP UI technologies here. So without further ado, introduce yourselves really quickly. That's the first round, and then pitch your topic hard and start, Wouter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wouter Lemaire, independent consultant, mainly developer, also grown as an architect, and also part of the SAP mentors. I've always pushed UI5 to the limits, and I think I did it again, but not only with UI5, with the web components thing. I also pushed the UI5 team to the limits. Should I already pitch or just?
No, go ahead and do it first introduction.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Marius. I work for Twilio now, but in the past, I've written many blog posts and created other developer content in the SAP community. And especially around a time when the UI5 topic really started to take off, I would say 2017, 18, like UI5 tooling, UI5 evolution. I published a lot of content about that. So maybe you've read a blog post of mine, and I'm also the creator of ECUI5. And I would say recently I have been fascinated by new UI frameworks, but more on that later.
Yeah, I am Marian Zeiss, also independent consultant. Also really active in the community, on GitHub and in communication with the architect SAP employees, writing blogs, publishing code. Really interested in mostly UI5, but also in the Fiori Elements framework.
Hi, I'm Simon Cohen, JNS developer at JNSsoft, and I would firstly say I think I'm more like Wouter said it in the last session, now a part of our next to those experienced developers here. Over the last few years, I mainly focused on the test automation topics in UI5 and especially with VDI5, as I'm also a VDI5 core contributor.
There you go, and you can keep the mic already, and you can pitch UI5 real hard.
I should start with pitching UI5. Okay, so UI5 for me is the framework when you want to build enterprise-ready modern web applications in the SAP cosmos. As UI5 is so closely aligned in the UI5 ecosystem, we can not only easily develop these applications, we can also easily deploy them to the customers on-premise, BTP, or even outside of the SAP universe with self-contained builds. As UI5 is so extensible, customizable, we can easily adapt also to custom requests from the customer that are outside of the norm. And as this is one of the big benefits, I would say this is also one of the big downsides of Fiori Elements. As soon as we break out of the standard list report object page floor plans, as we have to develop some extensions, I would say, or for me at least, it's a pain in the ass to build these apps, to maintain these apps. To maintain these apps, to even test these apps, I don't know how I should write unit tests for these extensions, as they are so many dependencies. Yeah, when I want to use the benefits of Fiori Elements, I just simply use the smart controls for OData V2 applications or the flexible programming model with its building blocks for OData V4 applications. There I can use complex UI5 controls like the smart table, where I get the variant management out of the box, where I get out of the box support for filtering, grouping, and sorting, and things like that.
Okay, well, I think Fiori Elements is the best start for enterprise applications. It's really easy start, and it's using UI5, but you don't have to write the same code over and over again. Like, you don't have to write a navigation, you don't do the binding, you just generate your Fiori Elements app, and that's it. The rest is going on with the annotations, and that's how you write the app. Like, if you have, but you, unfortunately, you're right. If you use one of those standard floor plans, but I'm with a company for a year now, I only write Fiori Elements app. And now we're in a state where you can act, like you saw it in the morning with Tobias and Marius, you can really write extensions and do whatever you want in a Fiori Elements app. So I don't think you ever have to go back to UI5, only when you have your really, really specific use case for that. You are my biggest component. Like, they do something different. But again, like, I don't want to write the navigation again. I don't want to do the binding. Why do I have to validation? I don't want to do that again. I just generate my app, use a little annotation as possible, and then I have my finished Fiori Elements app. Everyone is happy. The developer is happy. The business process owner is happy because we can quickly change something. And it's what is really important, upgrade ready for future versions, because SAP is the owner of the code, basically.
So, hello, I'm here to talk about fundamental library styles. And I think they made really good arguments about how to use these frameworks for enterprise applications. But this is really where I think is where fundamental library styles is so strong, because it's outside of that box. You can build other kinds of applications. Let's just think, for example, like within two demos today, like one in the presentation from Wouter earlier that showed the best of UI5, or like I could also point in this direction when I dropped that name, or I don't know if Mike is here, but he had this ChatGPT UI. And I think that's really cool. And like, if you think about the Fiori design system, it really came a long way from its start in 2013. It looks really nice, and users are like, business users are used to it. But now I think we're at a point where we should really wonder, is it still like does it make sense to always use a single page application framework if we want to build a Fiori UI? And I think fundamental library styles is the answer, where we can say we use different technologies, but we apply the Fiori design on top. You could use that for existing applications that were built by another team, and now they have to be Fiorified. So you can just like attach the CSS classes on top. You can basically convert them like in that way, or you can even think of like totally different scenarios. Like I always say, fundamental library styles is like the Tailwind CSS of SAP. So for example, when you say, I don't know why you would do that, but if you say you want to have a WordPress theme that looks like Fiori applications, you could use the classes there. You can really think of different use cases, different applications that you haven't used so far, but not only old applications, but also new applications. Let's say you want to go a little bit back to server-side rendering, but static site generation, pre-generation. Think of forms, like doing surveys, but making all of them look like the rest of the applications, like the SAP Fiori design system. Then you can use basically any technology that's out there. And the big advantage is it loads fast. I've been told I need to say something mean, so it loads fast. And there's always this excuse that when you build with UI5 that you say, oh, it's cached eventually, business users are coming back. And then the fifth time, 10th time, it's a little bit faster. Yes, that's true. But think of a form or feedback survey. Users are not completing that every day, but they want it to be fast when it loads initially. And I think these alternative UI frameworks can really help you there. And fundamental library styles helps you with the Fiori design of these applications.
Fundamental what? another framework. Marian, I think you're for too long in Fiori Elements. A simple example, every time, every client, every time the same question, can we put the field next to the label? Let me have a look. Then I need to come back and say, it's not possible. The most simplest things are not possible, and we need to break out of that. But what makes UI5 unique? What makes it different from other frameworks? What makes it one of a kind? Besides that, it's still version 1 today. It is the UI5 controls. UI5 controls, you do not have it for all the frameworks. And here it's easy even to make a custom app, not even a Fiori element, but a custom app. You have those controls. You just need to bind them, put some logic behind it, and you have an app. And this is the foundation of the framework. This is what makes it unique. It's what makes it one of a kind. Putting there under the hood web components will not improve the behavior of the UI5 controls. It will also improve the performance. It will make and make the best out of it. It will take UI5 to the next level and prepare everything it needs to go to version 2, in my opinion. So yeah, web components are key for this, and it's what makes UI5 that great.
So before I'm going to run around with the mic and get your questions to the panelists, I'm going to start with one. Shouldn't UI5 web components be UI5 first and not support other frameworks?
Good question. What I've seen at some companies is that they come with a set of web components in general. So with that, if many more and more companies will have their own designers that make their web components, and we can make it integrated easily into UI5, but they can also use it for other teams, which I don't mention. Then it's for the better of all the clients, or for the customers. They can have the same look and feel in Fiori as they have for other projects. Maybe not exactly the same because the framework is still different, but UI-wise, it will look similar. So I think it's great, and it's also open source or community-wise. It's also better to be open and be open to other frameworks, and that we not stay in our silo, our SAP silo. It will benefit back one day. Now it's okay, you still have the UI5 framework, but it will also be possible to include vanilla web components. If other frameworks also provide web components, or just some other developers, we could just embed them into our UI5 applications. And that's when a new world will open for us.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question for Marian, and it's how many clicks do you have every time to get to do something in Fiori Elements? I mean, you have rendered a list report. You click on the detail, and in that detail you have your table with the item. You need to click add or edit. Yeah, and it just keeps clicking and going, keeps navigating. And I think you need to go, if you need to go back, you need to click 5 times on back. And in a UI5 application, you can do that in 2 clicks or in 3 clicks, because in the object page, you just have your table, you make your table the possibility to do inputs with smart controls, and it's done. And it's 7 clicks less than in Fiori Elements.
But it depends on the requirements. Like the one of the biggest advantages from Fiori Elements, maybe somebody says, is the disadvantage everything looks the same. And in the enterprise environment, it's really big advantage because you don't have to tell the user every time you click here and oh no, the button is now here. So every time if you do a freestyle and do it every time differently, you have to tell the user every time again and again, now the button is here, now the button is here. But if you do that, you have to do that, and then it's quicker. So if you just generate Fiori Elements, you have your list report, click here, you go to the object page, here's your table, you have to click there, add. You have to tell the user once and he knows. But when you have like specific requirements, I have to do it every time again and again, and in like 5 clicks, then maybe implement a custom action or a wrap or cup action where you have like a form where you may be quicker. So yeah, it depends on the requirements, but the big thing is you in the end you're quicker. You don't agree? Okay.
Actually, I want to say also something to that. So now I have to defend Marian a little bit. Because I think he's also right. Fiori Elements has its use cases. If you want to build a Fiori application that looks almost the same, exactly as he has said, when we want to use the standard floor plans with the Fiori design guidelines, and most of the time customers want to have same looking applications for different use cases. And then we as developers, as we sometimes cannot influence how the customer wants it. Then Fiori Elements has very good points. Again, as soon as we break out of these things, I would immediately start with a freestyle UI5 application. And then we can also influence how many clicks we need to come to a certain point.
I wouldn't, but
No, you stop now.
Hi, I am pretty new to whole UI5 world. I'm coming from more full stack development, basic development. So I started with HTML, CSS, and whatnot. And I tried out, since I started working with UI5, basically all the stuff that is on the panel. So I tried all 4 technologies, Angular and fundamentals. I tried with Angular. And for I have custom UI5 and Fiori Elements. And thank you. My question comes back a little bit to the topic of this panel, so when to use which, and also the other question that is connected to this one. In order to recognize fairly and in a good way what tool to use, you need to have fair amount of knowledge of each of one of them. And since the world of SAP overall is huge, and also UI world of SAP is huge, how it is possible to approach for a newbie? So I'm basically only 1 year in, which is not very much in my personal understanding and opinion. what is the best way maybe to approach this whole trouble of finding the best tool for the purpose in this sea of opportunities?
I'll take this to Marius probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're here. So that's the first step. Good job. So what else? I think also something that you've already done. You've experimented with all technologies. You built something. That's always helpful if you do a tutorial and you have some experience. But I get the point that because you're new, you might not push each technology to its boundaries. So I totally get that. I would say, well, there is the book, obviously. There's also the attacker talk that I've done was probably the attacker 2 years ago. So the video is basically 1.5 years old. It's on YouTube. I think it's called Beyond UI5. Come to me later and we can find it together. It's on YouTube. So this is a 25-minute video where I say what the differences between these technologies are on a more like enterprise-ready from an enterprise-ready point of view. So how many controls are there? What's the maturity? Like what's the release cadence? So back then, fundamental library styles and UI5 web components were both release candidates. Now only fundamental library styles is in release candidate mode. I'm looking over there. Yes, no, okay. Let's talk about that later. But UI5 web components is a stable release right now. So that changed a bit, but I think the overall message of the video is still up to date. Do you want to append something?
No, because I want to say something. So yeah, that is, I think, a good entry point. I have a deeper going question that I'm going to put in now. So we all heard about the flexible programming model, right? So I'm confused. Where does it fit in? Do I have to use it in a freestyle app and make use of the smart controls V4? I simply call them like this because macro building blocks, come on. Or do I need to use Fiori Elements and use it with extension points? So when am I supposed to use the flexible programming model and where?
I think it's Fiori Elements.
Well, this flexible programming model is really good if you're on the more or less latest version, and that's where Fiori Elements currently lacks. So if you like before 96, you don't really have that full capability which is going to be promoted today all around the flexible programming model. But when you're on that version, I wouldn't start a freestyle application ever again, because you have those building blocks, you have custom pages where you can just add, and you can do everything the same as in a freestyle application, but you have like ready-made building blocks we can just use and drop in and use the metadata and annotation. So it's the best of both worlds from Fiori Elements and freestyle. The big drawback again is you need to be on the current version, which in the real world is unfortunately, like, I know it's getting better and better over time as we approach 27 or 30, but you need to be on that version. But again, it's a really good mix between freestyle and Fiori Elements.
Just in addition, like you said before, it depends on the business requirements, of course. The Fiori Elements comes with not templates, but templates, no? Floor plans. Yeah, floor plans. That's the word I was looking for, floor plans. It could, of course, be possible that your business requirements do totally not fit to that floor plans. If that doesn't fit to the floor plans, then you need to look to UI5. And if you have really specific requirements inside UI5, for example, with custom HTML, etc., which is not covered by the default controls, then you need to look at web components. And because if you start with custom HTML, adding into your XML view, it's possible, definitely, but it's not the way to go. Also with custom CSS, also do not put it in your app, put it as part of the control by using a web component, put it together and then bring it to UI5, that UI5 stays clean. But that's in addition to if you really go for, depending on the business requirements.
Maybe one last addition from my side for the flexible programming model. What is very good, you don't have to start directly with the flexible programming model. What I did at the end of last year, I tried out to migrate a freestyle UI5 application that I can also use the flexible programming model in it. And it was a smooth process. So you can also, let's say, start freestyle. And when you see, oh, now I need some building blocks, macros, smart controls, however they are called, I can easily migrate or integrate the flexible programming model into my application and start with the best of both worlds done.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a question and I'm not really sure who it should go to. So, in the traditional SAP ecosystem, we have also these query-based apps where you can have like Design Studio where you can drag and drop things onto the columns and it generates charts and automatically, computes, builds the table automatically. So, and I believe now that the traditional Design Studio has been deprecated and now the new approach would be with WebDynPro ABAP on the web. So when we have requirements like these where users want to build their own queries for whatever reporting and be able to do it without the developer's assistance, where just business users can do it, what would be the best approach? Like, do we still use WebDynPro on the Fiori Launchpad or just get rid of that, do something else?
Yeah, I was going to say SAP.
Gregor, you want to answer that? No? Okay.
You want to build your apps with drag and drop, if I understand correctly, or you want to build your applications by using drag and drop tooling? What?
Let's say the word low code.
Low code.
We do not do low code on this panel.
Yeah. Thank you, Volker. So SAP build apps should be the way to go, I think, but
we do not want to talk about this.
No,
Do we?
It's the wrong place.
It's a long story. No? Then I'll place one. So Simon, I want to use UI5, Open UI5, SAP UI5. Why not just UI5?
So Open UI5 is of course open source. SAP UI5 is then with some additional context. For example, smart controls, the flexible programming model is only available when we use SAP UI5. It's always, or also for me, the big question with which framework should I now start the next the next application, and then I also look at the customer, what he has in stack. If he has the Fiori Launchpad, for example, then it's more or less an easy answer for me that it's SAP UI5. If I want to be more independent of the SAP cosmos most of the times, then I choose Open UI5.
So it's a question for UI5. So in my company, Vue is very popular framework. We have a lot of Vue developers, and my boss is constantly asking me, "Hey, Marcel, for the next project, should we really use UI5, Open UI5, or SAP UI5? What should I tell him? What are your arguments for UI5 over Vue?"
Yeah, the question is UI5. It's regarding to UI5, you say, but it brings me to web components. With UI5 web components, you can use any framework you like, and you can make it look like Fiori. So if you want to continue with Vue, or you want to go to UI5, okay, it's its own framework. But if you want to have the look and feel from Fiori, then you can use the web components and integrate them in Vue. There are some tutorials on the website of UI5 web components that you can have a look into and try it yourself. But of course, what is the real reason he wants to switch? Is it because you're also having the launchpad? Is it because he likes the look and feel? I don't know the business case here, but yeah, if it would be the look and feel, then UI5 Web Components is okay. If it's because you're having a launchpad and then it's UI5, SAP UI5 is easier to integrate. It comes out of the box. But of course, there are some ways to make it work for Vue as well, or Angular or whatsoever. And if you have the knowledge, I wouldn't switch. But
yes, I mean, I agree with everything that Wouter said. I would append to that it, as you said, it depends on the requirements, but I think it also depends on the skills that you have and you have in a team and the technologies that are out there. If you use Vue, or if you think about like using static site generation or something like a framework on top of Vue, like Nuxt, that obviously makes a lot of sense if you combine it with UI5 Web Components. And I also want to say something that was not yet mentioned here in the panel, that even though like we are 4 persons and everyone like introduced the technology, that doesn't mean they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. So especially fundamental library styles and web components can go really nicely hand in hand together. If you, for example, want to use the CSS mixins, but you say you don't want to build web components, then you don't want to build components, then you use the web components, but you style them and position them with the CSS mixins, and you use the same basically CSS variables across both technologies. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
Might add to this, have fun when Vue 4 comes out to maintain the Vue 3 applications. So that is a big benefit of UI5. So who's next?
So I would argue that the only use case of using Fiori applications is when we have customers that have a really bad taste. I mean, look at the Fiori guidelines, design guidelines. It's fucking disgusting. Thank you.
Well, I'll call that an opinion.
I think there was a question in the first row, or was it not? No, not. I mean, unrelated to the previous question, but you want to ask one, or did I just misunderstand it? Yeah.
Probably taste is
think,
in the eye of the beholder, right? So
maybe Frederik, you can answer the question. No, I think, of course, yeah, I think SAP put effort in it on the design style guides. They thought about it. They did user experience tests, whatsoever, everything. So you don't have to do it anymore. They thought about where to put a button, what are the best practices. And if it doesn't look nice the way you like it, then you have also the team designer and to tweak it into your to company style sheets or whatsoever. And I've seen really some nice designs. So if you think it's crap the way it looks, it's maybe on the developers.
So I also append a short thing to that. So I really think Fiori came a long way since, like, we are talking about wave 3 right now. If you look at wave 1, that was something else. But even if you look at like WebDyn Pro, I think even like where it's coming from, in the end, we're talking about enterprise software, which is focuses less on consumer preference and more about functionality and complexity. And that sometimes complexity is like a force that draws in the other direction than usability. So there is the aim to combine it, but it's not always possible. And I work at a company now, so we don't use SAP. We use a product of a company that starts with O. And have you seen that user interface? That's even like much worse.
Okay, so regarding SAP UI5 versus OpenUI5, so the main argument was if you got a launchpad, you need to use the best idea is to use SAP UI5. So most companies still use are not on HANA or on the cloud, so they are stuck with UI5 version 171, and you can expect them to be there for at least the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years because the maintenance time frame for R3. So that means we're stuck with 171, most of the customers. So is it a good idea to get rid of UI5 and make the switch to something else? And then what? Who should I switch to?
Like, you have options. I wouldn't argue you stuck at 71. You have options like BTP or a gateway server. So I wouldn't use the excuse, oh, we have to use 71 for till 2030. You have options to use other versions. So it's not like you're really stuck.
Yeah, exactly. So you have 171 stuck on the ABAP system, but maybe you can also deploy the application somewhere else as a self-contained build where you have also the free choice of versions. And then, of course, you have to look maybe via a cloud connector through the BTP, whatever, that you can connect to your backend system. So yeah, the customers often then also wants to have their applications on-premise and things like that. That's another story then.
And I might add to this, so if you're not required to run in the Launchpad strictly, you can bootstrap from any CDN you want. So picking any UI5 version you want. You do not need to use the one that is installed on the on-premise system.
It's maybe far-fetched, but what about creating web components, including them via your UI5 library in your custom UI5 application, and then using the flexibility framework of SAP to allow your key users and end users to really use the flexibility of the Fiori elements within the custom UI5 application with the web components.
We have a winner, huh?
Yeah. I think so. If you create your own web components, you need to implement those functionalities. Just like today, the flexibility services. I'm not sure if it works. I know it works for Fiori Elements and smart controls. Not sure it works for the others. Not yet. So it needs to be then like a smart control to make it work. And so if you create your web component, you need to build it in a way that it can handle those actions, but it might be quite intensive to do so. But if you have the time and the freedom to do this into your web component, yeah, go ahead. And yeah, I think it's definitely realistic. And I don't know what comes, but it might be something that will be possible on the long term. I don't know, Marian, if you want to add something.
So we have time for about one more question, max two. So we don't get to miss the keynote. You should really attend the keynote, by the way.
I would like to go back to what we just heard about the fact that most SAP systems out there, on-premise at least, are still on a lower level of UI5, and also related to the OData services we have on the back end. So if you have an embedded employment, usually we have the same machine, obviously. But even if you have a front-end server, often we have an older OData service that comes with the standard apps. So my question is, when you have a scenario where you have quite old backend system with an old OData service, and you have an SAP Fiori app that is delivered in standard, that is on some release level like 136, 8, whatever it is, would you typically throw away the front end and just rebuild the UI on top of the existing OData service? Or would you rather just, go with the old UI? Just to understand, how would you approach this in practice?
It depends. Like, I don't think there's a general answer for that, because if it's a really simple application, you can maybe use the OData service, or maybe just write your OData services yourself. If it's really complicated, it's usually better maintained by SAP, hopefully. So I don't think there's a general answer. Like, you have to decide yourself, is the application really that important that I have to re-implement, or write it yourself or on top? I think it depends. I really can't say it depends.
So if the OData service fits perfectly and there is an app out there, but you don't have it available on your system, that's what you mean, huh? It's good. Yeah, I have similar use case, and it's about the travel and expense application from SAP. It didn't work as we expected, or it was slow with too many clicks, too many questions. And we said from the beginning, we can do this better. But they hadn't, and it's like Marian said, it depends. And they didn't have the budget for the developers to work on it. They didn't want to spend time on it. There was no time and there were no requirements. And so they just activated the standard. And 1 year later, they came back. They said, it's crap. The end users are complaining, it's crap. We don't like it. We don't want it. It gives errors. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what to do. We said again the same thing. We can make it better. We can do it ourselves. And so now and it's actually a project that's now ongoing. We are developing itself. We are also developing the own OData service, but we are using the classes behind that OData services. So we have everything in control when it comes to the OData service. The entities, the associations, the properties, the way we would like to use it in our UI5 app. But we can reuse standard, 20-80% rule. So it uses the standard behind. The OData is perfectly matching our UI app, and we are building the UI ourselves. The way they want it exactly, with only the fields they would like to fill in, and exactly the fields and the list and the tables, how they would like to have it. And that's how we are doing now. But again, it depends on the budget and the time you have. In the beginning, they didn't want to spend it. Now they see it's worth to spend it on it. But yeah, it depends. But it's a similar case.
I think these are nice closing words and summarizes the panel very well. It depends. Well, thanks all for coming. Thanks all for asking.